In the quiet stillness of winter, beneath the blanket of snow, a moment of transformation is waiting to happen. Fulton J. Sheen invites us to journey beyond the surface, to a place where the greatest breakthrough in history occurs. A child born in the humblest of places changes the course of humanity, offering not external power, but an internal revolution. In this profound reflection, Sheen draws parallels between Superman and Christ, humility and heroism, and the ultimate power of divine grace to transform even the hardest hearts. Join us as we uncover the deep, life-altering truths hidden within the story of Christmas.
Winter is often seen as a time of stillness, a period where nature seems to take a deep breath and rest under the cover of snow. But beneath the surface, something is always happening. Plants and animals are preparing for renewal, and life is quietly waiting to burst forth again. Fulton Sheen uses this image of winter to set the stage for the birth of Christ, the most profound moment of renewal and rebirth in human history. In the quiet of a small town called Bethlehem, a world-changing event was about to unfold, unseen by most, but destined to shape the course of time itself. Sheen beautifully illustrates how Christ's birth came at a time when the world was spiritually dormant, much like the earth in winter. Humanity had been searching for answers, struggling with its own brokenness, but had not yet fully understood the power of divine intervention. And then, in the stillness of night, a child was born, a child who would bring the world out of its spiritual winter into the light of redemption. This breakthrough of the divine into human history parallels the way winter gives way to spring, where from the stillness comes new life. But Sheen doesn't stop at the imagery of winter. He delves deeper into the human heart, revealing that unbelief is not just skepticism or doubt. It is often a fear of facing the truth about ourselves. Like the frozen landscape, our hearts can become cold, reluctant to embrace the warmth of faith. Belief, on the other hand, requires courage, the courage to confront who we are, to allow Christ's light to penetrate the darkness we might hide within. It is in this reflection, in this winter of the soul, that we must decide whether to remain dormant or to open ourselves to the transformative power of faith. Superman is one of the most iconic figures in modern mythology, a hero who comes from another world to save humanity, possessing extraordinary powers that set him apart from mere mortals. His story resonates because he disguises himself as one of us, hiding his true strength beneath a humble exterior. But as Sheen points out, there is a striking parallel between Superman and the story of Christmas, though the comparison leads us to an even deeper understanding of divine humility. In the story of Superman, the hero arrives with power and abilities far beyond those of any human. He saves the world by using his strength to overcome evil and protect the innocent. Yet, at his core, Superman is still an outsider, someone who doesn't fully belong to this world. Christmas, on the other hand, tells a much different story. God didn't come in the form of a powerful being ready to show off his strength. Instead, he chose the most vulnerable form possible, a newborn baby, dependent on others for survival. Where Superman offers a fantasy of rescue from external threats, Christmas is the reality of God entering into the very fabric of human existence, not as a hero in disguise, but as one of us. Sheen emphasizes that God, unlike Superman, doesn't need to hide his identity or power. His choice to become human wasn't about showing us his might, it was about showing us his love. In choosing to enter the world as an infant, God didn't just save us from external dangers. He came to save us from something much deeper, our own sin and separation from him. And while Superman might grow stronger and more heroic as his story progresses, Sheen reminds us that Christ's path was the opposite. From the infinite power of divinity, Christ chose the path of humility and weakness, teaching us that true strength is found in vulnerability, and true love is found in sacrifice. The comparison invites us to see Christmas not as the arrival of a conquering hero, but as the ultimate act of humility, a divine breakthrough that calls us to embrace our own vulnerability and faith. It's hard for us to fully grasp the magnitude of what it means for God, the creator of the universe, to become one of his creations. Fulton Sheen makes this concept relatable by offering an unforgettable analogy. Imagine a human being willingly choosing to become a dog in order to save dogs. It sounds absurd because we cannot fathom lowering ourselves to such a level. Yet this is precisely what God did when he became man. In the person of Christ, God did not simply come down to earth in a form that could command respect or awe. He didn't arrive in a majestic palace or as a mighty king. Instead, he was born in a stable among the animals in the most humble circumstances imaginable. Sheen highlights this stark contrast to emphasize the profound humility of God's incarnation. The great paradox of Christianity is that the all-powerful God chose to enter the world not in strength, but in weakness. Unlike Superman, who grows from humble beginnings to become a figure of immense power, Christ's journey was the reverse. He moved from divine power to human fragility. Sheen reminds us that God could have come as a ruler, a warrior, or a figure of overwhelming might, but he chose the path of a servant. His greatness is shown not in his ability to dominate, but in his willingness to serve, to suffer, and to ultimately give his life for humanity. The humility of God's incarnation is a lesson for all of us. In a world that often celebrates power, success, and influence, Christ's birth teaches us that true greatness lies in humility. By becoming man, God showed us that love is the most powerful force in the universe. Love doesn't seek to elevate itself, but to lower itself for the sake of others. The crib in Bethlehem is more than a symbol of Christ's birth. It's a symbol of divine love that humbles itself to lift us up. In our world, we are often drawn to heroes who save the day by changing circumstances, by removing obstacles, defeating enemies, and altering the environment around us. Superman fits this mold perfectly. He flies in, rescues those in danger, and defeats the forces of evil. But as Sheen points out, Christ's mission was profoundly different. His goal wasn't to change external circumstances. It was to change hearts. When Christ came into the world, he didn't overthrow the Roman Empire or abolish the injustices that plagued his people. He didn't remove suffering or eliminate poverty. In fact, much of the external world remained unchanged during his lifetime. But Christ's mission wasn't to change the outside world. It was to transform the very core of human existence. Sheen contrasts this with Superman's method of heroism. Superman saves people by physically intervening, altering the environment to protect them from harm. But Christ's work goes deeper. He came not to protect us from external dangers, but to free us from the internal chains of sin and death. His mission was to heal the soul, to bring about a transformation that no worldly hero could ever achieve. While we may long for a hero to fix the external problems in our lives, Sheen reminds us that the most profound change must happen within. Christ calls us to look inward, to confront the brokenness in our own hearts, and to allow his grace to transform us from the inside out. It is this internal mission that sets Christ apart, not as a hero who saves us from the world, but as a savior who saves us from ourselves. Sin is a sickness that infects the soul, much like a plague that spreads through a population, bringing death and destruction in its wake. Sheen uses this powerful metaphor to illustrate the devastating effects of sin on humanity. Just as the Black Death once ravaged Europe, leaving towns and cities decimated, sin ravages the human heart, destroying our relationship with God and with one another. But just as every plague has a remedy, so too does sin have a cure. Sheen draws a parallel between the medical remedies that have saved countless lives throughout history and the spiritual remedy that Christ offers through his grace. Christ is the divine physician who brings the medicine of salvation to a world that is spiritually sick. Yet, just as some people refused medical treatment during the Black Death, so too do many refuse the remedy that Christ offers. Sheen emphasizes that accepting this remedy is a personal choice. Grace is freely given, but it must be received. The tragic reality is that many choose to remain in their sin, rejecting the healing that Christ brings. It's as if a doctor offers a cure to a dying patient, only to have the patient turn away, preferring to remain in their illness. Sheen's metaphor serves as a stark reminder of the consequences of rejecting grace and the life-giving transformation that comes when we embrace it. In one of the most moving parts of Sheen's sermon, he shares the story of a woman who was deeply lost, far from God, and resistant to any notion of confession or redemption. This woman's heart had been hardened by years of separation from faith, and she wanted nothing to do with the idea of grace. But in her darkest hour, grace found her. Sheen himself became an instrument of that grace, gently guiding her toward a moment of confession that would change her life forever. Despite her initial resistance, something shifted within her, a moment of breakthrough. She finally allowed God's grace to penetrate the walls she had built around her heart. What began as a reluctant encounter with faith blossomed into a profound transformation. This woman didn't just return to the faith, she went on to become a nun, dedicating her life to serving God. This story exemplifies the theme that runs throughout Sheen's message. Grace is always waiting for us. It is powerful enough to break through even the hardest of hearts to reach those who seem beyond hope. But grace cannot force its way in. It must be welcomed. The breakthrough of grace is a reminder that no matter how far we've strayed, no matter how lost we feel, God is always ready to meet us where we are, offering a love that heals and transforms.
As we've seen through Fulton Sheen's timeless reflections, the true breakthrough of Christmas isn't found in worldly power or grand gestures. It's in the quiet, humble act of God becoming man. It's a story that transcends time, inviting each of us to look inward, to embrace the grace that can transform our hearts and lives. The ultimate lesson? Strength is found in humility, and true change begins within. So as we reflect on this powerful message, let us remember that the greatest gift we can receive is the one that invites us to be reborn from within. Thank you for joining us, and may this message continue to inspire you on your journey.